Hello, is this the UAP line? I'm not even sure what I'm doing. I haven't told anyone, not really. I think I'm losing my mind. But I need to say it out loud to someone. It happened 10 days ago. I was guiding two German tourists across Vatnajökull, one of the bigger glaciers here in Iceland. It was about 3 in the afternoon, dim light filtering through the cloud layer. We stopped near an ice cave to take photos. They walked a bit ahead. I stayed back. That's when it changed. The wind dropped. Dead still. The colors of the ice around me became strange, more vivid, glowing almost. And then there was this low hum, like a throat singing under the earth. At first I thought it was geothermal, some deep tectonic thing, but the air started vibrating. My bones felt it. The cave pulsed blue. Then silence, and suddenly I wasn't standing on ice anymore. I was upright, but floating. The light was amber, like candlelight through smoke. Around me were these figures, tall, thin, almost transparent. Their skin wasn't gray like you see in movies. It was more like frosted glass with darker veins running beneath. They never touched me, but I felt them in my head. I don't know how else to say that. Not voices, feelings. One of them stared straight into me. It had no pupils, just these endless, watery eyes. And I heard it think, "You're already part of the return." Then I woke up in my tent. 6 hours had passed. The tourists had called search and rescue. They thought I wandered off, but I had no frostbite, no exposure symptoms. And this mark, this tiny triangle on my thigh, wasn't there before. I don't want this. I'm just a person. I just want to take people hiking. But every night since, I felt that hum in my bones again. Do others feel it too?
Yes, good evening. I do not know who else to speak to. My family tells me not to talk about it, that it was a stress-induced vision. But I was a conductor for 32 years. I know what I saw. It was real. It happened on February 20th. I wasn't working, just visiting the old freight line in Shinshiro, where I used to operate. There's a tunnel there, long disused. No people, no noise, only trees, the wind, and old tracks covered in moss. I brought my camera to take photos. As I entered the tunnel, I saw a woman standing at the far end, very still, wearing a simple white yukata, the kind you'd see in an onsen. I thought it was someone filming a movie, but then she lifted her arms and disappeared into a vertical beam of white light. No sound, just vanished. The light shot into the sky, and that's when I blacked out. I came to maybe 10 minutes later. My camera melted. Literally. The plastic casing had warped. I smelled ozone and something like cooked seaweed. Later that night, I found 3 blackened stones in my coat pocket. They weren't there before. I sent one to a university lab. They called me back 2 days ago. Said it was not identifiable. Contained isotopic ratios inconsistent with Earth rock. I see the woman sometimes now. In my dreams. Always facing away. Always just before waking. Sometimes I think she left something inside me. Sometimes I think I'm not the one making these calls. Can you tell me if anyone else has seen her? Thank you. Please, don't call back. If they're listening, I've said too much already.
Yes, I'm calling now because I finally found your number. You people need to listen to me, please. I'm not crazy. 3 nights ago, around 2 a.m., I was on the rooftop of my apartment in Agege. The power had gone again, and I couldn't sleep from the heat. I was looking at the stars, just lying flat, letting the air cool me down. Then a flash, like heat lightning, but no thunder. The entire block went silent. No generators, no music, no cars. Even the dogs stopped barking. And then I saw it. A circular craft, maybe 20 meters wide, just above the rooftop, maybe 3 stories high, completely still, not making a sound. It was like looking into water, not metal. The surface moved, reflected stars that weren't there. I got up to run, but I couldn't move. Not paralyzed, but like my thoughts were slowed. Suddenly, I was inside it, but not with my body. I was still lying on the roof. I could see myself there, but I was somewhere else too, floating in blue. And there were others, thousands, maybe more. Human minds, not bodies, suspended, dreaming. They showed me something, a pattern, a sequence of geometric forms spinning in impossible ways. It felt like a key, and when I tried to understand it, it hurt, like trying to think in a fourth dimension. They said, "We do not come to take, we come to remind." When I blinked, I was back on the roof. 40 minutes had passed. My phone battery was full again, even though it was dead before. But all the photos on it, gone, wiped, except one. A single frame of static, and one triangular symbol glowing in red. Nobody believes me here, but I think more people are being shown the sequence, and not all of them wake up sane. What are they preparing us for? You know what the worst part is? Sometimes I look at people now, and I can tell which ones have seen it too.
Hola? Yes, this is the International Reporting Line, see? I found it through a contact in Mendoza. I was told someone would listen. That's all I really want now. I've been working lithium routes through the Salinas Grandes for 15 years. Desert, heat, flat white earth for miles. You can see the whole sky from there. Beautiful and cruel. On May 20th, I was coming back alone from the high plateau. No radio signal, no GPS. Just dead salt flats and a glowing sunset. I stopped the truck to rest, ate a piece of bread, closed my eyes for just a moment, and when I opened them, there was a shape in the sky. A black diamond, huge, floating silently over the salt. It didn't reflect the sunset. It drank it. Then, there was a shift in gravity. The dust from the ground lifted straight up, like reverse rain. My truck, a 3-ton rig, lifted 2 meters off the ground before dropping back. I didn't fall asleep. I left. I was standing on what I thought was the salt flat, but it wasn't earth. The ground was smooth, lit from underneath. I saw towers, but they weren't built. They had grown. Organic, metallic. And in front of me stood a being, tall, faceless, wrapped in something like light bent sideways. It reached out, not physically but through memory, and it pulled out a day I had forgotten. My daughter's birth. I saw it again, perfectly. And then the being said in my mind, "You forget what matters. We preserve." Then I was back in the truck, engine cold. 5 hours had passed. No tire tracks, no dust, just 3 marks burned into the salt in front of the hood, like claw marks. But too long, too precise. Since then, I've been seeing colors that aren't real, smelling ozone in my sleep. And sometimes, I feel the ground breathe under me. If anyone else has seen the black diamond, please, tell me I'm not the only one. I think they're collecting memories, not bodies.
Yes, this is Dr. Solveig Mira. I'm calling from Svalbard, though I don't know how much longer I'll be allowed to. My clearance is already under review, but I have to record this, somewhere public. On June 9th, we were running a routine data downlink from an Earth observation satellite over the Barents Sea. Clear skies, quiet station, nothing unusual. Then, on the monitor we saw it, just for a few frames, a perfectly circular distortion. Not an object, more like a lensing effect in the upper stratosphere. The station's lead dismissed it as thermal bloom, but then the static began, not just in the monitors, but in our heads, like a high-pitched vibration inside the skull. The younger staff had nosebleeds. One intern passed out cold. When we reviewed the frames again, they were gone, deleted. But the system logs showed an overwrite command from inside our own firewall, using a protocol we've never used. That night, I stayed late. At 2:17 a.m., all the aurora alerts triggered, but the sky was clear. No geomagnetic activity. I went outside. The horizon was glowing silver, and above the peaks, just above the tree line, I saw them. Dozens of figures, hovering motionless in a circle. Not flying, just suspended, like marionettes with invisible strings. I couldn't see their faces, but they weren't greys or reptilians. They were tall, matte black, with ridges where the spine should be and light leaking from their joints. They moved in sync, like they were part of a signal. I could feel it in my teeth. I blacked out after that. When I woke, I was lying in the comms room, the emergency lights pulsing. 2 hours had passed. I found a symbol scratched into my laptop's aluminum casing, perfectly etched. Not carved, embedded into the metal. We ran a spectral scan on it. It emits a low radio frequency. Constant. Unchanging. No one else wants to talk about it. But last night, one of our engineers disappeared. Just vanished. No tracks, no footage. And the static is getting louder. I think they're syncing us to something.
Namaste. My name is Priya Basra. I live near Taran Sahib. Our family grows rice. I have not called anyone like this before, but there was something in the fields. And I don't think it's the first time. It began last week, late evening. I went out to check the irrigation channels of I.U.A.R.A and the rains. The sky was clear, twilight orange. My dog Daya walked beside me, and then he stopped, froze, ears flat, staring at the horizon. That's when I saw them, 5 or 6 orbs of green light rising slowly from the far end of the field. No noise, not like drones. They moved sideways, then shot straight up and vanished. I ran. I thought it was some military test, but no one believed me. They said monsoon hallucinations. 2 nights later, I woke up to the entire farmhouse humming, not just sound, vibration, the walls, the floorboards, even the grain sacks were trembling. And through the window, I saw the entire field lit up, but not from above. From below, like the earth was glowing. I walked out. I don't remember moving my legs, but I was out there, barefoot in the mud. And standing in the middle of the field were 3 beings, short, thin, with elongated heads and sharp, luminous eyes. They didn't speak, but I could feel what they wanted. They pointed at the rice plants. Then, one of them looked at me, and I felt this pulse in my chest like my heart skipped backwards. I don't remember anything after that, but when I woke up, it was morning. My feet were clean, my clothes weren't wet, but every single rice stalk was bent in the same perfect direction, like a fingerprint pressed into the harvest. And my dog, he's blind now. The vet says there's no trauma, just gone. No one will help me. The village priest says it's a sign from the gods. But I think they were taking something. Not just rice, something older. My grandfather used to tell stories about lights that came during planting season. I thought he was just old. I don't think that anymore.
I.U.A.R.A. This is Tama Raukawa. I'm calling from I.U.A.R.A. I know this line is international, and I know my story won't fit the usual patterns. But maybe that's the point. On July 10th, I was deep in the I.U.A.R.A forest, running a standard biodiversity survey. I was camped by the hot springs, alone. No cell reception, no satellites overhead for 2 days due to a system blackout. I had peace. That night, around 3:00 a.m., I woke up to complete silence. No crickets, no wind, no geothermal hissing, just absence. I stepped outside the tent. The steam from the springs wasn't rising. It was hanging, suspended mid-air like frozen breath. Above the trees, I saw a pulsing sphere, smooth and translucent like obsidian glass lit from within. Then came the sound, not loud but deep, a frequency. I couldn't hear it. I felt it. In my spine, in the roots of my molars. And it started aligning with something in me, like tuning a string. I lost time after that. When I woke, I was lying at the center of a perfect spiral of scorched earth. The trees around me were untouched, but the moss and ferns were singed in concentric circles. And my digital field recorder, which was off, had exactly 37 seconds of audio stored. Just static, and then something that sounded like voices speaking in reverse. We sent the file to an analyst in Wellington. He said the waveform has symmetry, not human, not natural, designed. Since then, I've been dreaming in patterns, not images, equations, vectors, dimensional folds I can't even describe. I don't think it was an abduction. I think it was calibration. The old people here talk about spirits in the forest who sleep for centuries and wake only when balance breaks. Maybe that's what they are. Not invaders, not saviors, just correctors. I don't know what they did to me, but I can still hear the tone under every other sound.
Hello. I was told this number connects to those who might believe me. I've worked the Sahara most of my life, mapping dried riverbeds and ancient hydrological scars. The desert hides its history under kilometers of silence, but last week it spoke. I was near the Tassili Niger Plateau, remote, no roads, no tourists. I was tracing what's called the Red River, an ancient underground channel visible only by drone LiDAR. But that morning, I saw water, actual red water flowing in the open down a dry ravine. It wasn't mud, it was lit from within, pulsing faintly, flowing uphill. I followed it for about a kilometer. It terminated at a depression in the rocks, a bowl filled with sand, except the sand was moving, shifting in symmetrical waves. Then everything went quiet, no wind, not even the sound of my own breath. A figure emerged from the sand, not rose, emerged, as if the sand had never been solid. It was tall, cloaked in mirrored fragments that reflected everything except me. I looked around and realized my shadow was gone. It raised one hand and the red water rose upward like a ribbon, curling through the air. And then it froze in mid-air, still flowing but motionless, like time had paused around it. I heard a phrase, not with my ears, but all at once, like remembering something you never lived. When rivers forget their paths, we return. Then it pointed to the sky. I looked up, and there were hexagons. Giant faint hexagons etched into the deep blue above, like a mesh had been overlaid on the heavens. I blinked, and everything was gone. The river, the figure, even the footprints. But my compass hasn't worked since, and last night I found the same hexagonal pattern burned into the underside of my tent. I believe the desert holds memories, and something ancient is stirring in those bones again. We keep searching for contact in the skies, but maybe it's already flowing beneath our feet.
Oui. My name is Lucien Giraud. I was a ranger in the Vosges for over 40 years. I know the forests here better than my own house. Every trail, every tree, every shadow. But there's something in those woods that was never on the maps. It happened 3 weeks ago. I was near Lac Noir, checking an old shelter before storm season. Sun was setting, light coming through the canopy in gold rays. I noticed the birds had gone quiet. Too quiet. Then I felt it. The sensation of being watched, not by an animal, but by something curious, like a presence. I turned around and there it was. A clearing that shouldn't exist, just wasn't there before. At its center stood a tree, twisted silver-white bark, branches like bone. And perched around it were dozens of eyes, not birds, not animals. Eyes floating, blinking in perfect unison, watching me. I couldn't move. The air thickened, and the shadows at the base of the tree began to rise, shaped themselves. A figure emerged, tall, thin, arms too long, no face, just more eyes blinking on its skin. And I heard them all at once whisper inside my skull, "We study your wilderness, because it remembers." Then the entire clearing flickered, like an old film reel burning up. And I was standing in dense forest again. The path behind me was gone. I had to bushwhack for hours to reach the road. Since then, plants around my home have grown in strange spirals. My dog won't go near my boots. And at night I hear whispering through the trees, words I almost understand. People think contact will come through cities, through signals in the sky, but no, it's already here, hiding in the oldest places, the ones we stopped listening to. And I think the forest is starting to listen back.
Good evening. This is Daciana Popescu. I live in the village of Barsana, near the Ukrainian border. I've lived in this house all my life. My father built it before the war. Stone walls, steep roof, hardwood beams from the old growth forests. The kind of house that remembers you. But something is wrong with it now. On the night of August 27th, I woke up just past midnight. There was no sound, no crickets, no wind. Not even the creak of the house, which it always makes when the temperature drops. Just nothing. I stood up and clapped once, out of habit. There was no echo. The sound didn't bounce. It just stopped. I walked to the hallway mirror. My reflection didn't follow. I moved. It didn't. It just watched. Then, without warning, the walls of the house seemed to stretch, quietly, like smoke. The hallway elongated. The mirror grew darker. I wasn't inside my house anymore. I was inside a memory of my house. There was a figure standing by the old fireplace, thin, angular, with a face like folded linen. Its eyes were silver, not glowing, reflective. It tilted its head and said not out loud, but directly into my bones. This structure is an index. We enter through remembered design. I asked what it meant, though I don't recall speaking. And it raised one long hand, and the floor vanished. I was suspended in a space that looked like my childhood bedroom, but twisted. It had errors, window frames that looped, rugs with impossible tessellations. Furniture I had never owned but recognized. I awoke back in my bed. No time had passed. The room smelled faintly of ozone and cedar. But the echo hasn't returned. The house is still quiet. Too quiet. Sound still dies in the corners. And on the kitchen wall, faint and shimmering, are lines of architectural drawings, ones I've never made, but that seem to depict other houses built from memory itself. Her voice lowers. I think they can move through places we've built, so long as we remember them clearly. And if that's true, then our minds are doors. Every room is a coordinate. I've started dreaming of staircases that have no landings, and sometimes I hear footsteps, exactly one floor below me, no matter which floor I'm on.
Yes, hello. I was told to call this number by someone in the UN Ecological Office. I don't know if you're investigators, scientists, or something else, but I need to say this to someone who might understand. I'm a botanist, been studying rainforest biome recovery in the Congo Basin for almost 20 years. My specialty is rare symbiotic fungi and root signaling networks in hypersaturated ecosystems. But what happened on September 6th wasn't biological, not in any normal sense. We had just set up camp near the Lomimi, river after a week of data logging. That night, it began to rain heavily, but that's not unusual. What was unusual was that the rain glowed. Pale green, faint at first, then bright enough to light the canopy. We thought it might be bioluminescent spores or atmospheric ionization, but when I stepped out of the tent, the rain didn't touch me. It bent around me, forming a dome, and inside the dome, I could hear singing, not vocal, not human, more like pressure pulses on the surface of my skin, humming in chords too complex to decode. Then the trees around me changed. Their bark peeled back slowly, not physically, but in layers of perception. And beneath each one was a form, tall, root-like beings, humanoid but grown, not born. Their skin shimmered like wet leaves, but where you'd expect a face, there was a cluster of glowing nodules that pulsed with the rain's rhythm. One of them stepped forward and touched my chest, not with fingers, but with a thought. And I felt something activate, like a memory had bloomed inside me, of plants I've never seen, ecosystems that never evolved, songs that weren't written, but seeded into the biosphere. Then it said, not with words, but resonance. We germinated you, and now the sprouting has begun. I blacked out. When I woke up, it was morning. Everything looked normal, except the camp's plants had grown overnight. Leaves 10 times their normal size. Mycelium across the tents. Even my skin is changing. I have a raised pattern across my chest now, hexagonal, like leaf pores. I sent blood samples to Kinshasa. They flagged it, said my chlorophyll levels are non-zero. I think we were planted here, and some of us are starting to break through the soil.
Hi, my name is Sarah Menendez. I'm a freelance cartographer and surveyor. I was hired by a private conservation group to chart topographic anomalies across the Four Corners area, border of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico. I've worked remote landscapes for over a decade, but on September 15th, something impossible happened while I was mapping a series of ridge lines west of Shiprock. I was using LiDAR drone mapping and hiking alongside it to manually verify coordinates. That's when I noticed the horizon had shifted. Not the sky, not clouds, but the land itself. It had folded upward slightly, as if the desert had curled like the corner of a page. At first, I thought it was a mirage, but my laser rangefinder bounced back incorrect measurements, like the land was closer than it should be. I took a step forward, and suddenly I was somewhere else. No flash, no sound, just a click, like an old slide projector. I was still in the desert, but wrong. The rocks glowed faintly from within, shadows fell in 3 directions at once, and above me, the sun had become a thin white line stretching across the sky, like the stroke of a brush. Then I saw them, not beings exactly, architectures, giant moving forms of soft glass and flexing angles. Like buildings alive, they moved in pulses, sometimes growing taller, then flattening, all without sound. I looked down at my hands, and they were transparent, my bones shining like stars. A voice came, but not from anywhere. It said, "You have stepped between frames. This is a maintenance space." I asked what that meant, and the voice replied, "Reality must be serviced. You have intersected a moment of realignment." I blinked, and I was back. Same spot, same coordinates. But my drone's footage, it shows me vanishing for 1 hour and 44 minutes. Just gone. No transition. And my topographic map is now wrong. Elevations have shifted by meters. Valleys where there were ridges. A hill that now doesn't exist at all. I think the landscape isn't permanent. I think the world is rewritable. And sometimes, we catch them doing it. And now, every time I stare too long at the horizon, it feels like it's staring back. Yes, my name is Karin Falk. I live alone in a cottage just outside U.A.P., near the forest line. My husband passed 3 winters ago. Since then, it's been just me and my routines. But on September 22nd, I came home from town and I found myself already inside. At first, I thought it was a break-in. But when I looked through the front window, I saw me, not a twin, not a hallucination. It was me, same clothes I was wearing, same posture, sitting calmly at the kitchen table, flipping through my old photo albums. I backed away, waited 30 minutes in my car. I called the neighbor to walk through with me. When we went inside, no one was there, no sign of entry, nothing missing, nothing disturbed. But my album, Volume 4, was left open to a page I hadn't touched in years. A page I'd always skipped. That night, I started remembering things I'd never lived. Conversations I never had. A birthday in a town I never visited. A sister I don't have, but whose name and laugh I now remember clearly. Over the next few nights, I began seeing strange flashes in the mirrors. Only for a second, but always delayed. I'd turn my head and my reflection would move just a fraction of a second too late. Then came the voice, not in my ears, but inside my thoughts. You are incomplete. We filled the gaps. You are your own arrival. That was when I saw the lights, not in the sky, but beneath the frozen river. Long strings of shifting pale blue, like roots or circuitry, pulsing just under the ice. Now, I can no longer tell which memories are mine. And my handwriting, it's different. My letter curved the way my mother's used to. I haven't written like that since I was 10. I think I wasn't abducted. I think I was updated. And whatever walked through my door or before I got home was me, just earlier.
Yeah, this is Makani Reyes. I work with a deep-sea cabling company based out of Tahiti. On September 29th, our team was repairing a fiber line near the Hikurangi Trench, about 400 kilometers offshore. We were about 4,000 meters down, using a manned, submersible, old-school tech. No drones this time. It started with the hum. Not mechanical, not sonar. This was organic, a long, low-frequency tone, oscillating like a whale call, but smoother and much deeper. It didn't come from the trench wall. It came from below us. The instruments froze. Navigation drifted. Then the outside lights dimmed, despite no change in power output. We looked out the viewport, and there was nothing. No sediment, no current, no bioluminescence, just black. A complete absence of detail. And then, something moved. Not toward us, but around us, like we were being circled. Pressure sensors began to pulse in a Fibonacci rhythm. Our depth gauge held steady, but the light readings showed movement. Then we saw it, a shape larger than anything I've ever imagined. Not a creature, not mechanical, something between. A ring, perfectly circular, pulsing with inner light, like an ancient coral structure built by something not of Earth, floating in slow motion through the abyss. And in that moment, our voices disappeared. We tried to speak. Nothing came out, not even breath, like the water was muting the world from the outside in. Then I heard the message. Not words, not even ideas, just permission. You may know that we are beneath all things, but not above. Then we were back. Lights on, systems working. We surfaced 5 hours later, but when we checked the logs, the dive lasted 11. I've had tinnitus ever since, but it plays chords, and in my sleep, I feel pressure shifts, like I'm still underwater. I think something lives in the trench, not a species, a presence, one that waits, listens, and occasionally lets itself be noticed.
Yes, my name is Dr. Camila Ortega. I'm the lead researcher at the Paranal Solar Observatory. We track sunspot cycles and coronal fluctuations. But this isn't about solar data. Not exactly. On October 9th at 04:21 a.m., we received a spike, short, intense, symmetrical, unlike anything we've recorded before. Not from the sun, but from just behind it. Of course, we thought it was a sensor glitch, but our backup logs, completely isolated, recorded the same spike, exactly 4.2 seconds long, exactly identical across every instrument. I went to the observation deck to see it myself, and that's when I realized everything had stopped. Not slowed, stopped. The wind, the cooling fans, the pendulum clock beside the control panel. Even the dust in the air was frozen mid-float, like time itself had gone cold. And then, above the eastern ridge, the sun split. Not literally, but visually. A second disk unfolded from it, identical but darker, like a dim echo. The light between them became a kind of bridge, a golden helix that reached downward, not into the earth, but into me. I didn't move. I couldn't. My thoughts were moving at normal speed, but my body was not. And within that golden helix, I saw someone descending, a figure of pure outline, no detail, just edges, almost like a diagram of a person, but made of pulsing solar threads. It came close, reached toward my chest, and said, again, without voice. We adjust perception to preserve stability. Time is not broken. You simply drifted too close to the boundary. Then everything snapped back. Light, heat, noise. Time resumed like a slammed door. The ridge brightened, and the shadow sun was gone. But since then, every clock I wear fails. Every piece of my clothing begins to fade at the center, right where that being touched me. I've checked solar data worldwide, and that 4.2-second signature is nowhere else. I think I crossed into something not meant for observation, and I believe there are maintenance protocols behind our universe's time stream. I just drifted into one and was gently pushed back, but I don't think I returned alone.
Blessings. I was not certain I should call, but I believe the phenomenon you study may not be separate from what the church once called visitation. I live at a secluded monastery in the foothills near Suceava. On the morning of October 13th, before Matins, I was walking the grounds, as I have every day for decades. But something was wrong in the silence. It wasn't just still, it was sealed. The birds did not stir, the dew did not fall. Even the wind in the trees was not swaying the branches. And then the monastery bell rang, but it didn't make a sound. I saw it swing. I saw the rope pull, but I heard nothing. And as it rang, light spilled from the bell's surface, dripping like liquid metal. It shimmered down the walls like water through stone. Then the sky changed. A flat grey disc, like a ceiling, appeared above the chapel. Symbols began to form upon it. Circular glyphs, turning slowly, revealing themselves like clockwork. They move with a rhythm I felt in my chest. I fell to my knees, not in fear, but because I could feel something reaching through the glyphs. Not God, not demons, something in between. An observation, a measurement. One of the symbols pulsed 3 times, and I heard a thought. Faith creates structure. You are within a resonant vault. When I looked up again, everything was as it was. Birds flew, the bell was still. But above the chapel door, burned faintly into the limestone, was a new symbol. Not paint, not etched, but embedded. It matched nothing in our texts. But I've seen it since, in my dreams, in candle flames, reflected in chalice water. I do not believe they are evil, nor holy, but I believe they come through ritual patterns, chants, geometry, repetition. We are not alone in the sanctuary, and perhaps we never were.
Yes, hello, my name is Ji-hoon Bae. I manage urban optimization for Songdo Smart City, automated transit, biometric doors, AI waste flow, the works. On October 21st at exactly 2:33 a.m., the entire biometric grid across Sector C went out. Every scanner failed simultaneously. We thought it was a firmware issue, but it wasn't, because none of the backups triggered either. I was dispatched to investigate the issue in person. I walked through the high-rise corridor between the vertical gardens. The glass panels along that walkway reflect the skyline, usually stunning, almost hypnotic. But that night, there was no reflection, not missing, replaced. The mirrored windows showed a city that wasn't there. Similar layout, same buildings, but subtly off. Wrong lighting, different clouds, slightly warped symmetry, and most disturbing, no people. The entire reflection was empty. I reached toward the glass and it shimmered, visibly rippled like disturbed water. And as I stared, a figure appeared in the opposite window. It was me, but with no expression, no breathing, no blinking, just watching. And behind him, behind me, was a second skyline, one composed entirely of repeating fractals, tower structures that spiraled into themselves, like code being visualized. And then, my headset failed. The earpiece hissed, and I heard a transmission. You are within the overlap zone. Local version is out of sync. I blacked out. When I came to, I was on the other side of the walkway. Security footage shows I walked straight through, but the video corrupts halfway. Frame jitter. Data fragmentation. One of the guards got a nosebleed just watching it. Now, my building access resets every morning at 2:33 a.m. No one can explain why. And sometimes when I walk past mirrored surfaces, I don't see my reflection immediately. It catches up. I think the smart grid doesn't just monitor us, it overlays us. And maybe, sometimes, it glitches just long enough for the other version to look in.